Welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. I am your host, James Parker. Well, we have a new ruling on the status of 350 Venezuelan immigrants in America. And my next guest is going to help us make sense of what this new Supreme Court decision means. Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch is back on the James Show. Good to see you again, Kate. How's it going?
Hey, good. How are you doing?
Okay, so what exactly did the Supreme Court rule on Monday when it comes to these 350,000 Venezuelans?
So it's a temporary ruling, what they would call a stay or an injunction. And so the decision of the Supreme Court is that the cancellation of temporary protected status for Venezuelans by the Trump administration is allowed to move forward while the lawsuit regarding the legality of the decision proceeds through the courts. So it's a pretty big blow to Venezuelans and TPS because what it means is that they can lose their status and be detained or deported while the lawsuit is pending, which could be months or years.
All right, so when we say temporary protected status, how is that different than other Venezuelans who came here with, I don't know, a green card or something?
So TPS, temporary protected status, is a program by which we as a nation provide a protected stay in the United States for people from any country that has had some type of collapse, like maybe they have a hurricane or maybe they have a political coup or some other type of infrastructure collapse. And then our government will say everybody who's here from Venezuela who was here before March of 2023, for example, is protected against deportation, and then they get work permits and Social Security cards. So it is meant to be a temporary program to protect people who really can't go back to their countries at this time.
Man, 350,000 is a lot. I didn't realize we had that many. And these are just the temporary protected status ones?
That's right. That's the number of Venezuelans who are under TPS. And, many of them are theoretically eligible for something else. Maybe they have asylum, maybe they have a work, an employment case or a family-based case. But a lot of them only have TPS, and probably the Trump administration, based on the Supreme Court ruling, is going to be pretty immediately revoking status and going after those folks.
But this issue isn't done. This just gets out of the way until the final decision can be made. That's a question mark.
That's right. And the question overall in the court is whether the revocation of protection for Venezuelans was discriminatory. Because obviously this is a temporary program. DHS/the president generally has the authority to not renew TPS. But what typically happens when there's a non-renewal is there's a really long ramp. We know, a long time in advance that it's not going to be renewed, that things have settled down in the country. Like when there was an Ebola outbreak in Liberia, that and everything got resolved, that TPS went away. The question here is whether it's, discriminatory on the Trump administration to revoke TPS as quickly as they did, and whether things are actually better in Venezuela. And many people would argue that they're not. It's just that Trump doesn't want to have TPS for Venezuelans. So that's the question that the court is grappling with overall.
The way you explain it, I think the court could end up going either way on this one.
I agree. I mean, I think it's always an indication when you get a ruling in an injunction of how the court might rule in the overall question. So, and probably, there is a lot of power within the executive branch about whether TPS gets granted or extended or terminated. I wouldn't be surprised if the cancellation of TPS ultimately were allowed by the courts. But hopefully, as with a lot of these things, the Trump administration starts to realize that the more deliberative and thoughtful and slow they can be about their actions, the less hot water they're going to get into in the courts, which are just sort of like batting down a lot of these policies like whack-a-mole right now. And it's just really chaotic and inefficient.
We're talking with Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch, an immigration attorney. Is this another one of these issues that once we have a ruling on Venezuela, it could cascade to immigrants of other countries who are in a similar situation?
The Trump administration is going to see how this goes, and they'd love to be able to revoke TPS protections for people from other countries like Honduras or El Salvador. So, I think they'll be watching how this goes.
What is the argument for Venezuela being too dangerous for 350,000 Venezuelans?
Well, political collapse. So there's an economic collapse, but the underlying root of that is a political collapse, and there's a lot of political persecution against people who have spoken out against the regime in Venezuela. So lots of people who have fled are college professors or students or other professionals who have expressed political opinion, and they get arrested, detained, abused, disappeared even. It's a pretty harsh and brutal regime at this point, and that's what a lot of people are fleeing.
All right, Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch from Lincoln-Goldfinch Law. Appreciate your expertise on the James Show. Although I do think it's a little more spicy when we disagree on issues. This has been fun.